after 9 years, Canadians have seen what they've done and the results. So what are they doing in response to that? After 9 years of failures, costs and crime are up, what are Liberals interested in talking about in the House? What are they trying to focus our attention in on? Well, they have this new bill, Bill C-65, and in response to all these challenges, in response to the public anger at the failures of the government, they're proposing to delay the election even further. Unbelievable. Well, if the public are upset and they're demanding change, they're demanding new direction, we better delay the election a little longer so we can stay in power for as long as we can and collect our pensions. That is the approach we're seeing from this Liberal government. You know, you look around the world and there are a number of cases we can see where governments that are struggling for various reasons have at least the willingness to put their programs to the people and to make their case to the voters. And we've challenged this government. Rather than delay the election, most of the people I talk to in all parts of this country, they actually want an election sooner, not later. They want an opportunity to pronounce on this government's failures and replace them as soon as possible. And in the context of the level of fierce criticism and the challenges the country is facing, the responsible thing to do would be if this government said that they were ready to make their case, to put their case before the Canadian people, and let the Canadian people decide on that trajectory in a carbon tax election. But no, the Liberals are trying to move in the other direction. They want to delay the election further. They want to stay in power for as long as they possibly can and avoid the inevitable judgment to the Canadian people, a judgment on their 9 years of terrible failures and the results that it has produced for this country. So naturally, Conservatives are opposed to this bill. We believe that instead of having a later election, it's time for an earlier election. That Canadians want to have a chance to rule on the many failures of this government, and we will, of course, be opposing this bill. Now, in addition to their evident desire to delay the election, to cling to power as long as they possibly can, this government has coincidentally put forward a date change to the election that just so happens to allow many additional members of Parliament across the way to be eligible for a pension. And that, Madam Speaker, is certainly suspicious. And the members across the way who are putting their own pensions ahead of the desire of Canadians for an election that will allow us to replace this costly, corrupt coalition NDP-Liberal government. Now, the wise amendment from my colleague from St. Albert, Edmonton, points out that this focus on protecting their own position and protecting their own pensions is particularly galling to Canadians at a time when so many Canadians are indeed struggling. And the struggles Canadians are facing, by the way, are things that this Liberal government loves to try to blame on other people. Well, how can you explain that after they've pursued inflationary policies, things cost more? This government has chosen to pursue policies that make things more expensive. And on this point, the amendment mentions the carbon tax, and I want to spend a couple minutes on the carbon tax because, the funny thing about the carbon tax is that New Democrats and Liberals refuse to acknowledge the basic logic of how a carbon tax is supposed to work, even as advocated by its proponents. Right? So proponents of the carbon tax, is that a? Sorry, I have a point of order.
The member for Humber River, Black Creek.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. But just on a point of order, I've recognized a half a dozen times where my honourable colleague keeps talking about everything else but the amendment and the bill before us, just to remind him that this is talking about electoral reform and not carbon tax and not the umpteen of other things that he has mentioned.
So I just want to remind the honourable members as well that there is some flexibility and when members are debating, and so I just ask members that when they're debating, just to bring it back to the original motion that's before the legislation that's before the House. The honourable member for Sherwood Parkford, Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Having been interrupted, I'll now start from the top. I think I will just reacquaint my friend across the way and the one person who applauded for her intervention with the fact that we are debating an amendment from the member for St. Albert Edmonton, an amendment that says the following. The House declined to give second reading to Bill C-65, an act to amend the Canada Elections Act, as the bill delays the next federal election so that more departing members of Parliament can collect taxpayer-funded pensions, a measure that is particularly offensive at a time when Canadians are struggling due to the NDP-Liberal government's inflation, carbon tax, and housing costs. So I am, of course, speaking, as I said, about the amendment. That would be not only related to the topic, but definitively the most germane thing that one could possibly talk about. That is the amendment that is presently before the House. And the amendment, of course, highlights how the efforts by the Liberals to cling to power by their fingernails by passing a bill to delay the election is particularly offensive to Canadians who would like to see the carbon tax end as soon as possible. Canadians know that the next election will be a carbon tax election. It will provide an opportunity for the Canadian people to make a decision about whether they approve of the NDP-Liberal plan to massively hike the carbon tax in the years ahead, or the Conservative plan to scrap the tax, to axe the tax in every region of the country and for good. That's the choice that Canadians will have in the next election. And a confident government would say, they're ready for that choice. They would say, let's have that debate. The member for Winnipeg North says he welcomes that debate. It seems that he has more courage than the leader of his party, because the leader of his party and the minister responsible for this bill have put forward a bill to delay that great clash of ideas that will occur in the next election. So if the member for Winnipeg North is ready for this conversation and is ready to allow his constituents to rule on this vital question, then I suggest he tell his Prime Minister, scrap Bill C-65, we're ready, let's have an election. I can tell you on this side of the House, we are ready. We want to let Canadians decide. Do they prefer the radical NDP-Liberal plan to hike the carbon tax, to quadruple the carbon tax, or do they prefer the common-sense Conservative plan to axe the tax everywhere and for good, Madam Speaker? I think Canadians will choose axe the tax, but in any event, we are ready for that debate. We are ready to submit ourselves to the judgment of the Canadian people. And instead, this government, rather than being prepared to submit to themselves to the common sense judgment of the common people, they want to be able to delay the election, to hang on to their pensions for as long as possible, to hang on to power as long as possible, rather than letting the Canadian people decide. Madam Speaker, in this inevitable carbon tax election, they won't be able to delay it forever. So when the inevitable carbon tax election comes, Liberals and New Democrats will have to explain the following to the Canadian people: that the very purpose of a carbon tax is to increase costs. That is what even proponents of the carbon tax say it exists to do. The carbon tax exists to make driving your car more expensive, to make taking that family road trip more expensive. That family road trip that the Minister of Health thinks is going to burn the planet. Right? I think it was notable after that how various people on social media were able to find posts from the Prime Minister about family road trips he has taken. The Prime Minister doesn't just take family road trips. He travels much greater distances using more carbon-emitting options other than the simple family van. But it's another example of do as I say, not as I do. That apparently when everyday Canadians want to spend a few days seeing beautiful parts of our country, putting their kids in the car, traveling places, that the Minister of Health thinks that that's going to burn the planet, Madam Speaker. This is the kind of do as I say, not as I do, radical extremism that we have come to expect from this radical NDP-Liberal coalition government. But look, let's be clear. The purpose of a carbon tax, what it is designed to do, is to increase the price of goods so that people will consume those goods less. That is the theory behind the carbon tax.
Règlement, l'honorable député.
The honourable member. Madam Speaker, we've had about 150 opposition days on the carbon tax. And today we have another bill before us on a different topic, and yet my honourable colleague is just speaking about the carbon tax. This is a point of debate. I have already mentioned that there is latitude on this. The honourable member is speaking on an amendment that also mentions the carbon tax. I will let the honourable member continue his speech. The honourable member.
Il a 4 minutes et 43 secondes.
4 minutes and 43 seconds, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I will, at risk of being accused of repetition, I will clarify the point for my bloc colleagues again, as I did earlier, that we are at present debating an amendment put forward by my colleague from St. Albert, Edmonton, and that amendment is about declining to give second reading to Bill C-65, because Bill C-65 is revealing the priorities of this government, priorities that are dead wrong. Conservatives would like to be focusing on providing economic relief to Canadians. We are ready for a carbon tax election in which the choice will be clear between a conservative common sense plan and the plan of the NDP-Liberal and frankly of the Bloc to impose additional costs on Canadians, punishing new costs that will further undermine opportunity for everyday Canadians. So, Madam Speaker, here's where we are. It's clear and unmistakable that at a time when Canadians are overwhelmingly disapproving of the direction of this NDP-Liberal government, at a time when Canadians' disapproval of the government reflects their own frustration. It reflects the fact that they can see how policies of this government have made their lives materially worse, how there is more poverty in this country, how there is more division in this country, how there is more crime as a result of policies that have been pursued by this NDP-Liberal government. In that context, where Canadians are upset at the government, see how this government has made their lives worse, and are therefore looking for an alternative to the current approach. In that context, rather than recognizing their failures, rather than having changing course in terms of their policies, rather than putting their program to the Canadian people, this Liberal government is focused on pushing forward legislation to try to delay when that ultimate judgment will come down from the Canadian people. That's what we're debating. That's what Bill C-65 is about. Bill C-65 is before this House because rather than calling an election, or rather than putting forward bills that would actually make Canadians' lives better, Liberals are focused on trying to delay when that election will come. So, Madam Speaker, we're ready to put our plan before the Canadian people. Our plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Our plan to focus on the common sense of Canadians. And I just want to remind the New Democrats that plan is to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. And I think we're winning converts, Madam Speaker. I think.
To ask questions and comments, so I ask them to please wait until the appropriate time. The honourable member has just under 2 minutes. The honourable member.
Madam Speaker, I think we're finally getting through. I think the NDP are finally hearing us. I think they're finally maybe reflecting that the House leader.
Order. I just want to remind the honourable member again that they will have an opportunity to ask questions and comments, so I would ask them to please wait. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Saskatchewan.
And Madam Speaker, the NDP House Leader, he self-identifies as a worker bee. He's told us that he's a worker bee. And if you doubt that he's a worker bee, all you have to do is ask him and he'll tell you that he's a worker bee. Meanwhile, New Democrats are at committee putting forward motions specifically to avoid doing parliamentary work over the summer. Imagine that. At a time when Canadians are suffering, at a time when Canadians want their politicians to get down to work and find solutions to the challenges this country is facing, you have Liberals putting forward a bill to delay the election, and you have New Democrats putting forward motions so that they don't have to work until the election comes. This is what the NDP coalition is about, delaying the election and doing as little work as possible until it comes. Conservatives are ready to get down to work. We're ready to replace this government. We're ready to clean up the mess that's been created over the last 9 years, because our country did not have these problems 9 years ago, and it will be set on the right path under the principled leadership of the member for Carleton. This is what we're offering Canadians. We are ready for that election. We oppose Bill C-65 because we don't want to delay the election. We are ready for that carbon tax election to put our common sense plan before Canadians for lower, fairer, and simpler taxes, to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. To bring it home, Madam Speaker, let's reject Bill C-65. Let's have that carbon tax election and let the Canadian people decide.
Hear, hear.